thank you for your time today. It's great to speak with you again. How have you been?
Yes, I've been good, Joe. And listen, thanks for the opportunity to be able to do this podcast. I've been looking forward to it.
Thanks for coming on. I've obviously done some research into you and your company, and it's really interesting because I think it touches a couple of points where we're seeing now with different AI solutions. Some are like generalists, OpenAI, fantastic tool,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot of direction for specific industries on how you can utilize it and how you can get the most out of it in terms of the daily responsibilities of a job. But that's where I found Subject really interesting because it's very niche and it's very on target in a specific industry. And for someone that may be a bit, they've not been innovative in the past in their role, or there's not really there's not really the opportunity to promote innovation.
Yeah.
It's very clear on how you can use the tool and how you can get the most from it within the industry that you help.
It's very kind of you, Joe. Well, that's what we've tried to do with not just the tool and how we built it, but also its positioning. So just for kind of like the audience, so I'm a co-founder. So my name's Dan Reeves, and I'm the co-founder of Subject. And I'll go into a little bit more detail through the podcast on how we came about launching this particular product. Essentially, we're looking to assist anyone who's producing, any business, any operation that's producing content on the web, to be able to optimize that content fully to be visible in AI search.
Yeah.
So our solution is API first, so that we can deliver it as agnostically as we possibly can. And we're looking at building out an agentic solution also. But ultimately, that's that sort of clear mission, is to fully optimize the process of content optimization for brands and digital publishers to be visible in AI search.
And so when someone starts a company, it's quite a big leap in terms of responsibilities, and probably also like when someone's first started their first company, there's a lot of work that they underestimate.
Yes.
So when you started Subject, how did it come about?
So again, that's a good question, Joe. I mean, so this is not our first business. So just to kind of very much I'll do a very potted history, but my business partner and I came out of careers within the media world. And back in 2012, we got together and we launched a digital marketing agency, and very much in the content and digital content space. And that was our first time that we'd set up a business ourselves. But I suppose all of the learnings of that allowed us to kind of launch Subject. And we launched Subject very much on a sort of bootstrapped, lean approach. And again, looked to get some early stage investment using SEIS, which is the startup enterprise investment scheme. But it was that sort of the knowledge and understanding that we had from our previous business, where we'd actually also incubated an early stage AI search product that allowed us to set up leanly Subject.
And with Subject, how long have you been going for now?
So we incorporated at the beginning of 2024. We bootstrapped the back end infrastructure and the scalability, the sort of scale opportunity around the architecture in 2024. We essentially, at the beginning of this year, we honed a front end solution, MVP ready, raised some early stage funding, and have been developing and working with paying customers and sort of moving through that very early stage monetization.
Nice. And it's exciting, hey? You're very at the very start of the journey, I guess.
We are.
Yeah.
What's exciting, I think, is that the backdrop to the product that we've launched as well is that, and as you touched on in your first sort of question and our first sort of discussion around AI and this this technology change and this shift, and I suppose really brought into the public consciousness through the launch of ChatGPT. But we've been working on, sort of natural language processing and harnessing that and NLP in some products that we are indeed in our previous operation. But I think the speed at which both adoption of this technology since ChatGPT's launch as a sort of, I suppose, as a tool and a way in which it can assist operations in many different ways. But for startups like us, can operate very leanly with a kind of an AI first approach. But what that's also meant is that it's also fundamentally changing the way in which people search and retrieve information. And so the backdrop to the launch of our product is this paradigm shift in search that's taking place, moving from what was a sort of classic 10 blue links from Google search to this AI answer engines via ChatGPT, Perplexity, but also Google themselves. I mean, Google have shifted the way in which we retrieve information for them and ask them for information, hugely. And that again has sort of propelled this market shift. And so essentially what we've built is our product is sort of grounded in some key technology that drives modern search around topic and entities, around data layer and schemas. So we've sort of been launching and adapting in a world of sort of fundamental change, which is exciting and scary in equal measure.
Yeah, yeah. And just in terms of like the features for the audience to get a bit of a grasp of what could be expected if they were to like, have a subscription.
Yeah.
For you guys, what's the core features
So
and how do they benefit someone?
Yes. So the core features. So again, coming back a little bit to when we were building the MVP out, a lot of the work that we'd done was with digital publishers, and we sort of started with a pain point. And there was a pain point particularly around some optimization tasks, which are actually, when executed well and correctly, can deliver a lot of value, both in terms of the archive that a operation has, so archive of articles and data that they have, and also around workflow efficiencies. And we started with a couple of areas that were real pain points for digital publishers, which was around internal linking of content. So whereby you create pathways from a new article to articles that are sitting within your archive. We also automate tagging, and we also automate a data layer on each article, which allows machines and also for our product to work really efficiently. So we started with pain points that were expressed to us through some of the early stage customers we were working with and have been and kind of developing with. But as I say, this shift in search was taking place whilst we were building. And so what we've built now, or what we have developed now, is we deliver out of the box the internal linking of content, the tagging, the schema, but we're also building AI visibility tools within our product. So you would be able to look at where your brand sits versus your competitors and how you're performing from a metrics basis in AI search. And we essentially can partner any size operation to ensure that they are visible and have the structures in place to be visible in AI search.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I actually spoke to someone the other day about this, about the future of work for different roles, and whether do you see a future where in about, say, 5 years' time in the media and publishing industry, there will be a requirement and it'll be, do you know how to operate Subject, for example, or these tools? And because the time saved is obviously it's an obvious choice for a company if they're looking at their bottom line.
Yes.
Because a creative, their time is spent much better, well spent on creating content and actually doing the thing that will, improve the content instead of the admin related tasks.
So I think you've touched on a really, really interesting point. I mean, I would struggle to sort of look 5 years ahead, only because the fact that things have changed in the last 12 months or even last 6 months at a speed that even my grey hair can sort of, can't quite comprehend. But I think but you've touched on a really, really interesting point. And I think there is a big debate. And if we take media as an example, there is a big debate on how these systems and these products both deliver efficiencies and can also deliver value on, say, for example, commercialization of platforms, but essentially keeping that human in the loop, and particularly from a creative perspective, we believe to be hugely important. I think there are a number of businesses and operations looking at fully automating content production. And I think the difficulty with that is that at some point, if we just take search, for example, these large language models are being trained on, well, one would hope is being trained on new content that, isn't just being supplied and produced by large language models. So I think there is there is an ongoing debate about the ethics of AI, but I think you have touched on a really good point, because I think from an adoption and a training perspective, and particularly if we're taking new recruits in, say from postgraduates, for example, my big sort of recommendation would be, if you're going to operate in a particular industry, look at the tools at which they use, become well versed in those tools. And you can do it, as we know, most of them supply their, whether it's on a YouTube channel or whether it's on their own site, they will deliver tutorials. It's just to get aware and understand the tools that operate in those systems, because I think you're right. I think businesses will look to recruit people that have experience within that area.
Definitely. And could you also just explain, because it's quite a new term, GEO. Could you kind of explain that for people? Because people
So
hear SEO and then
yes,
now there's GEO, and it's
yes.
what
So
other acronyms will there be?
well, there's a number of acronyms actually. So, and again, it depends on. There's a big debate within the SEO. Let's say it is within the SEO industry about what to call this shift. And I think there's quite a vociferous argument around, actually, this is so new, the way in which the large language models crawl and index. And actually it's not about indexing anymore, it's actually about retrieving the right information. They do it in a very different way to classic search, is one argument. So you have GEO is Generative Engine Optimization, AEO is AI Engine Optimization. You've also got AIE, you've got AI SEO. There are a plethora of acronyms. But I suppose the argument that's beginning to win out at the moment is that, look, search and the way in which search has evolved, which was dominated by Google and is still dominated by Google, has evolved and moved away from keywords. And this was taking place when Google was absolutely, and the large language model AI search launches, moving away from keywords and moving to this sort of topic and entities approach, which is all around people, places, things, and sort of building out topical authority, and about the way in which people want to have information kind of sent back to them, and what it's about is less on this sort of keyword approach and more around topic authority. And I suppose what's then laid on top of that since the launch of the AI search engines, so the answer engines, is this new layer and way of which to retrieve information, which is powered by what's called RAG systems, which is retrieval augmented generation. And it's the way in which these sort of crawlers take a question, so through a prompt, and then go to the web and mix and blend web content and their LLM archived data to be able to retrieve and pass and generate an answer for us. And so, yeah, the big debate around it, but I think it's all, and certainly from our perspective, it's about grounding in the correct ways, and using the key sort of technologies around topics and entities, something called vectors and embeddings, and these data layers, which will allow the machines to read this content and be able to retrieve it and synthesize it for their answers.
Yeah. And if have you done a sort of like ROI study yet to kind of highlight to a company the sort of hours that you would save, to implement and use subjects?
So we are building that into the platform from a metrics perspective. But to give you an
Mm,
example, we've been working with a B2B publisher, a global B2B publisher, um, and we undertook a project for them where we there were 30,000 articles they wanted us to ingest into our database and then automate all of the internal linking. We basically that took. I mean, it's quite a big data, sort of relatively large data challenge, and the fact that we've obviously built these, these algorithms to be able to deeply mine the archives and then create multiple links with suggested and recommended anchor text is kind of no sort of small engineering task, really. But that took us, those 30,000 articles took us around 24 hours to fully automate all of the linking within them, with an average of sort of 15 links per article. Now,
wow.
we worked out that that would probably have taken them about 5 years in human terms and manual terms to be able to execute. So I think in terms of the time saving, it's pretty huge, because even if
Yeah,
if you break it down to an article, the processes that we optimize and automate probably would have taken around half an hour per article, for a medium-sized publisher, is now done in essentially real time.
that's crazy. Yeah. It makes you think you should maybe charge by the year that's saved.
That's got that's I like that. I'll take that. I'll maybe add that into the pricing model.
Yeah, pay after the ROI study. Yeah. And is there any other like trends apart from obviously this industry that you're, very in the weeds in, but is there any other trends within technology that you're paying attention to right now or are particularly excited to see further developments in?
So I think from a product perspective, we're looking at two things: agentic delivery. So building in agentic workflows and being able to deliver our solution agentically. Because I think there's a big argument that's taking place that the web and the way in which we the web interface is changing. Some argue that websites will be obsolete in the next 2 to 3 years time. Now, I don't
Mm,
necessarily fully subscribe to that, but we're moving at great speed. As I say, I mean, you only have to look at ChatGPT's launch of Atlas, their browser, or Perplexity's latest browser launch as well, just to see where that's going. That the journey, and even Google announced within being able to book travel through their agentic delivery, you'll be able to research a trip and book it all seamlessly without ever leaving the Google platform, not needing to go and check, kind of look at external websites. So that argument
yeah.
is playing out. So agentic delivery is going to be, I think, really key. The other would be sort of multimodal. So thinking about video, audio. So some of those customers that we're working with in the digital publishing space, and actually in the B2B and SME space, are having podcasts, as part of their content rich delivery. Video obviously is hugely important. So being able to essentially create vectors and embeddings to be able to get to and use that as part of this archive search
Mm.
modality, I think is going to be hugely important. So those are the sort of two main areas for us from a product perspective. Is we're looking at building and developing within our products, because that's the way the sort of market is moving.
Mm. And then another sort of question, then, since you mentioned the multimodal aspect, and obviously there is a lot of competitors and loads of different
Yes.
innovations all across the world. And sometimes, in terms of strategy for acquiring new customers and increasing your market share, it's not the typical route of direct messaging and acquiring customers on a one-to-one basis. Sometimes it could be even finding a similar company where 1 plus 1 would equal 3 in terms of features and
Yes.
maybe if there's a possibility to connect your API or some sort of partnership. So it would be interesting to see what other companies that Subject could potentially partner with in the future that would be complementary in
I
terms of offerings?
I mean, again, that's a really good question, and I suppose the thing is that we have taken and it touches on two things. One, the way in which to market a business now, and actually sort of again drive sales and revenues, again, is changing at great speed. I think automated email outreach, for example, is becoming saturated, and so one needs to be able to take sort of different approaches and ways in which to be smart, and particularly bootstrapped companies or ones that have just taking a non VC investment route need to be really smart and really clever in how they do that. And I think that, as you touched on, the collaboration slash potential sort of coming together of operations that sit sort of alongside one another and potentially then deliver a wider solution as the sum of their parts, I think again is something that businesses like ourselves will need to be open to, because we may not necessarily be able to deliver the scale at, say, a VC route operation may well be able to take, because they've raised two major rounds, an A and a B, and anything up to sort of 60-70 million, and so therefore are in a different sort of operational space than us. But I think it does come back to, and I think one of the things for us as a business and an operation is, look, we are lean, but we want to be bigger than the sum of our parts. We also need
Yeah,
to ensure that what we deliver in terms of features are absolutely sort of the best that they can be, and for the customer that we're working with, so that we can deliver that value that then obviously ensures that customer, once onboarded, is the lifetime value is one that's really deep and long and meaningful.
definitely. Definitely. What like sort of advice would you give to someone who's, they may have an idea, but they don't know really what's the right foot forward, and what sort of path do they take, and how do they, actually execute on it? What would you say to someone that is, they're on a fence, a crossroads?
I think there's probably no time better for someone to be able to ideate, a sort of a real kind of gut instinct on a business than there is at the moment. And what I mean by that is that you, with your idea and using some of the tools that are out there at the moment, you can actually move very swiftly into a proof of concept, even an MVP, without necessarily needing ever to have or employ a engineer at that stage. So to be able to sort of ideate, there's no better time to do it, I think. So
Mm,
I suppose my advice would be is that, look, it's about learning the sort of key applications and the tools that are out there. And if you've got a fantastic idea and a great idea that you're passionate about, is look to execute that, even if it's just in the lightest kind of kind of way possible. I don't know whether it's through using Lovable or Macally as platforms to sort of do. You can do it, and I think then there's the opportunity to think about some kind of funding, because again, you can launch with a very lean model,
mm.
now, and I think that that's exciting. That's exciting.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's interesting, when we talk about companies that go down the bootstrap route as opposed to getting funding
Yeah.
from VCs. Because I was actually reading a post the other day by this guy. His like brand and image is all about VC startups. He does a post every week on, the latest funding rounds. But one of these posts was a little bit different, and it was about how he spoke to a friend at a VC, and then a friend at this startup that just raised money, and they raised something ridiculous like 40, 50 million. And how he was kind of bragging to his mates about this. And then when he got off the phone, he could tell that his friend was secretly bragging, but also boasting, because he thought he got more money from what they actually were going to make in their roadmap of, like, terms of growth and valuation. And his friend was thinking about him, thinking like, it's a double-edged sword. You've just given yourself the biggest expectations now, because these VCs are going to want to see those results that they've invested in. And if you don't, deep down don't think that you're actually going to achieve that in the time scale that you've promised, then everyone within that environment is just going to be very toxic, and you're just not going to succeed essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think again like, I understand, and I think the VC route is for certain operations, and it comes with, as you quite rightly said, huge delivery expectations. I think ultimately you need to ensure that your whatever business, I suppose that you're in, that you can execute a business plan, that you can drive revenues, and whether you choose to scale that business with external venture funding, for example, I
Hmm.
think you still have to be able to demonstrate, demonstrate um, a sort of an ability to drive revenues and then show that you can scale those revenues.
Hmm.
But I think that, look, the bootstrapped approach and building in real kind of looking to get those the profit margin in as swiftly as possible, drive revenues, you can build a very, very valuable business without necessarily having to go down a sort of, I suppose, a sort of classic venture capital route, one would call it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And if you had to look back at your career and say, what's like a defining moment that really changed the trajectory and like the sort of path that you took in terms of industry and connections,
Yeah,
maybe, is there a specific project or learning curve or even a connection that you made?
that's a really good question. I think probably when my business partner and I came together to launch the agency, that was a real pivotal movement, because prior to that, I'd always worked in sort of medium to large media operations. And I think when you launch a business and you start a business, your learning curve again is on a huge trajectory. And um, you know, it's a real change from working within an organization where you're an employee. There's a big difference. I think with when we began to R&D a technology project, which we did sort of back in 2016, 2017. That was again a massive sort of increase or trajectory in learning, because it was a new. I'm not a technical founder. I don't code. I'm not a Python expert. So again, learning and understanding just the sort of top level layer of what that means is a big learning curve. But what I think it did was it meant that, coupled with the fact that we'd launched the business before, when we came to launch Subject, we had all of this sort of wealth of knowledge and understanding. Made some, as everyone does, make some mistakes along the way. I think it's put us in a really good position to be able to develop this business and develop it in the right way and deliver real value.
Yeah, definitely. And that's interesting that you mentioned that you're not a technical founder, because it hits on a good point where there's like a misconception for like a founder or a CEO to understand every element of the business, but it's not the case at all, is it? It's actually about hiring the best people for each role.
Well, again, yes, you're right. I think, there is, where we're at the moment, we are definitely kind of on the latter of that, which is doing everything, doing everything. But, but I think you're absolutely right. I think our ambition is to build a team, and to, hire the best talent, nurture the best talent, um, and sort of be able to drive the business forward with that, as you quite rightly said, with a talented team where you're not, as in, as even as a CEO, you're not the CTO, so you're not the technical lead, you're not the marketing lead, because you're hiring that talent into the business. I think what's interesting is that now with AI support, sort of workflow support, actually you can build a very valuable business on a very small team. There are some exceptional outliers out there at the moment, where
Yeah.
they are sort of driving towards sort of unicorn values, and there's about 6 people within the team. So it's, again, I think, driving fast growth, there's never been a better time for that.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely. And as we're approaching the end of the year,
Yeah.
2026 is just around the corner. With the new year, what's going to be the focus for Subject?
So
Is it, releasing new service, product release, or focusing on a particular market?
I think two things really for us is continued and the lead one. Now that this year was very much about building out the MVP alongside already paying customers. We
Yeah.
now have a solution that essentially drives value and can be sort of scaled. I mean, we've already sort of proved that with, we're working with some customers that have hundreds of thousands of kind of articles in their archives, in their data, and ingested into our database. So next year is really about sales. It's about driving sort of revenue growth, but alongside that, we have to also be able to ship new features. So being able to ship features that match our customers' needs and pain points is still an essential part of what we will look to deliver next year. But ultimately, driving revenues and ensuring that we can, as we're essentially pre-seed, but we need to now, prove that we can, generate revenues and generate a sort of a revenue model that can be scaled.
Definitely. And yeah, well, thanks for your time today,
Well, thank
Dan.
you.
And what's like the best way for anyone listening to learn more about Subject or
So
just connect with you?
yeah, so either Dan Reeves on LinkedIn, which maybe we can share my LinkedIn sort of profile, but at Subjct.ai. So it's www.subject without an e.ai. And our website is in its second generation. It's still obviously, we're still sort of working on it, but yes, you'll get all of the product information. There's a beta waiting list, so again, you can join that. So yes, that's the best places to get me.
Sounds good. Well,
Excellent.
thanks, Dan.
Joseph, it was great to talk to you, mate.
Thank you.
Take care.